Yes, let me welcome everybody. I'm Tom Connell. I'm actually the Conservation Committee Chair of the Wilderness Canoe Association, and I want to take a minute to provide a plug for that. This is just a one-pager just describing what the Conservation Committee will be concerned with prospectively. This builds on the work Jeff McCall has done over many years. I've taken over from him now. And areas of focus that we want to engage with and connect with WCA members and encouraging them to get involved are canoe route preservation, environmentally responsible wilderness travel, and then general wilderness conservation and sustainability issues, recognizing that's a very broad topic and we certainly can't do it all, but we want to identify areas where we think it would be great to have our members become more aware or get more involved. So if anybody has any suggestions about specific things we could look at and discuss as a group, that would be great. Or if you'd like to get involved, there is an email address right there. So certainly welcome involvement of others. And I'm very pleased to say that as an inaugural Conservation Committee event, this I think addresses all three of our priority topics, and we've got two amazingly authoritative speakers to talk to us about well, I've called it Wilderness Conservation in Action. It's about the Three Rivers project that is the work of CPAWS, Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, the Ottawa branch, and the Friends of the Des Moines. So let me first of all introduce our two speakers. John McDonnell is the executive director of the Ottawa Valley chapter of CPAWS, born and raised in rural West Quebec. John has been the executive director of the Ottawa chapter since spring of 2007. He holds a degree in forestry, as well as in Canadian history and political science from the University of Ottawa. I think that, John, that gives you a lot of perspective on what you're talking about. And before joining CPAWS Ottawa Valley, John was director of the Forêt La Blanche Ecological Reserve, a rare old growth forest north of Buckingham in the municipality of Mayo, Quebec. Just a word on CPAWS, although John, maybe you can introduce it yourself more comprehensively, but it's a charity, a national charity that advocates for the effective long-term protection of ecologically and culturally significant land, freshwater, and ocean areas in Canada with a strong national and regional presence. And it's been doing this valuable work for more than 50 years. Our other speaker is Wally Schaber. Wally, according to your bio, you grew up by the Ottawa River, playing in log booms and canoeing the tributaries of the Ottawa River. So you've got it in your blood. You graduated from the University of Waterloo in environmental science, and at university, Wally started an organization that I think most people have heard of, Black Feather Wilderness Adventures. That's quite a summer job, and it's still going strong, lo these many years later. So that was, needless to say, quite a successful enterprise. In 1975, Wally was a founding partner in Trailhead, an Ottawa-based retail outfitter, again, still going strong. Wally is the author of Last of the Wild Rivers, which talks about tributaries of the Ottawa River, and as well as the history of the Des Moines area. And then Wally's been very active working with CPAWS through the group Friends of the Des Moines to support all the valuable efforts that we're going to hear about in the session today. So I'm going to turn it over to John to start off the presentation. And I think we're going to have John and Wally go through their materials. And if you have any questions along the way, you could put them in the chat. Then we'll have lots of time for Q&A at the end of the session. So John, over to you.
All right, thank you, Tom, and I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully it works.
That's good.
All right, so thank you once again. I'll be speaking to the conservation, the work of CPAWS Ottawa Valley and our partners in terms of the conservation work to protect the Dumoine, Noire, and Coulonge rivers and some of their tributaries as well. There we go. So just a quick word about CPAWS Ottawa Valley. The Ottawa Valley chapter is one of 13 regional chapters of the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. We are one of the only environmental organizations in Canada that can really claim to be in virtually every province and territory. We're very much a grassroots organization with boots on the ground, regional offices with regional boards. We're a national organization, but we're also very much a regionally focused group as well. And the Ottawa Valley chapter was founded in 1969. We celebrated our 50th anniversary a few years ago. And the organization was founded primarily out of concerns for the ecological integrity of Gatineau Park and areas immediately around Ottawa. And since then, we've grown in terms of our focus to look at the entire Ottawa River watershed in both Quebec and Ontario. And I'd like to acknowledge at this point that we do work on the unceded ancestral and traditional territory of the Algonquin people, and certainly in terms of our work on the Noire, Coulonge, and Dumoine, we are proud to be working with members of the Algonquin Nation on those particular projects. Just to give you a flavor of some of the things we do, certainly a big part of our work is promoting the establishment of new parks and other types of protected areas, ensuring that existing protected areas are well managed. There is unfortunately a tendency, sometimes once an area is designated as a park or protected area, to see an erosion of the protection over time, or activities that may not be compatible with a protected area. So we do play that watchdog type role, and particularly in the area in which we operate in southern Canada, we don't necessarily have those big wilderness areas, and so connections between parks and other natural areas are very important. And so connectivity is a big focus of our work. About 20 odd years ago, we pioneered the concept of linking Algonquin Park to Adirondack State Park through an initiative called Algonquin to Adirondacks. And as we'll see in a couple of minutes, through our work to protect the Dumoine River, we're actually taking that Algonquin to Adirondacks initiative and connecting it to the boreal forest in northern Quebec. So, from a continentally, it's very much a continentally significant area. And noting as well that the landscape outside of parks, the managed landscape is equally important as well. So the management of public lands is obviously a concern to us in terms of forest management plans and other whether that's mining is not so much of an issue in our region, but certainly looking at how the landscape outside of parks is managed. And finally, a lot of our work is focused on connecting people and communities to nature. We fundamentally believe that it's important for people to experience nature, to learn about nature, and ultimately, if we want people to care about nature, they need to have had that experience. So I'm going to start sort of at a very high level and then gradually drill down or focus in on the Three Rivers. So to start us off, why do protected areas matter? Why should we care about protected areas? And we often are asked, what do you mean by protected or protection? There's a number of different types of protected areas in Canada. We have national parks, provincial parks, ecological reserves, conservation reserves. So fundamentally, from a CPAWS Ottawa Valley perspective, a protected area is a geographically defined space with boundaries that are recognized in legislation, be that the National Parks Act or Provincial Parks Act or other legislation, and that has a vocation of protecting nature. So the overriding vocation, overriding mandate for that area is conservation. And so generally speaking, there's an absence of industrial activities, and certainly, looking at the Three Rivers area, there will be no logging, mining, or hydroelectric development permitted going forward, or once the protected area is established. So fundamentally, that's where we're starting from. And as I think everyone knows, I mean, the planet is stressed. We're seeing that in terms of climate change and other impacts. And so the UN State of the Planet report came out about a year ago, and there was a strong call for the protection of nature. And one of the best ways to do that is by establishing targets. And so all the way back in the 1990s at the Rio Earth Summit, to more recently in Aichi, there was an agreement that governments and countries would set aside a certain percentage of their land mass for conservation. The Aichi target was 17%. Unfortunately, the 17% target was really a compromise. It's not really based on science. The conservation science tells us that if we truly want to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, we need to be looking at protecting between 30% and 70%. So we have a long way to go, unfortunately, but certainly looking at the Canadian context, there is a lot of opportunities as well. And I think working collaboratively, working together, we are and we can be more of a leader in terms of conservation in the world. And we're seeing a great growing international recognition of the need for parks and protected areas. The G7 leaders this year agreed to a nature positive compact. Canada and about 80 other countries came together to form a high ambition coalition, whereby we're aiming to protect 25% of our land mass by 2025 and 30% by 2030, with the view to have a full recovery of nature by about 2050. And that was underscored in Minister Guilbeault's mandate letter. And not only that, the mandate letter also asked him to champion this internationally. So not only advocate for this within Canada, but also promote this around the world. And we've seen that the public supports conservation. There have been a number of polls conducted in the last few years where up to 80% or more of Canadians want to see Canada lead in terms of conservation. And right now we have a federal government that is keen. I mean, we've seen two historic investments in conservation in budget 2021 and I believe budget 2019. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, in the low billions of dollars. and as I said, the public supports this. But the challenge we're running into is that while the federal government is very keen, we have to recognize that Canada is not a unitary state, and that a lot of the decisions around public land are actually made at the provincial level, and that's where we run into some challenges. So I'll leave it at that for now. I've got a couple of maps that I'd like to show, and then I'll come back to sort of the situation in Ontario and Quebec, and then again sort of set the stage for where we are with the Three Rivers campaign. So this map here shows essentially what we call the three global conditions. So it does show the opportunity that we have in Canada. So this large green area is what we call large wild areas. You'll see that they are fragmented. If you look at the northern prairies, the NWT, the Yukon, northern Quebec, but there are still large blocks of intact landscapes that can be protected. But you do look at southern Ontario, southern Quebec, the prairies, the lower mainland of BC, very much impacted in terms of industrial development, urban development, and agriculture. And we are seeing this sort of slowly creep northward as we access resources further afield. The next map shows the distribution of species at risk in Canada. And if looking at the previous map, there's a heavy correlation to the presence of species at risk and the places where people live. So again, the prairies, the southern prairies, southern Ontario, southern Quebec, and to a certain extent, the lower mainland of BC and the southern tip of Vancouver Island. So there is a correlation there to where people live, and we do see, obviously there's more biodiversity in the south than there is in the north. Yeah. And then the final map and this is a map of protected areas, so parks and protected areas across the country. Again, sort of the larger parks and protected areas are found in the north, there is a sort of a smattering of smaller parks and protected areas across southern Canada, and there is a need for more conservation in the south, and as I mentioned at the top as well, there's a need to protect those key corridors and connections which link up these protected areas, those are valuable for so many reasons, but in terms of climate change, we know that species will need to migrate northwards in order to adapt to changing conditions, and protected corridors, particularly those along rivers like the Noire, Coulonge, Dumoine, are very important from that perspective. So going back to Quebec and Ontario and the Ottawa River watershed. So CPAWS put out a report card on protected areas last year. We graded provinces and territories in terms of how they're doing in terms of getting to the 17% target and then beyond. So Ontario got an F. There's been unfortunately no progress on protected areas in Ontario in over a decade. Both Liberal and Conservative governments have really not done anything in terms of protected areas. There's still really no plan in place for an expansion of the protected areas network. There's no targets. We were happy to hear the government announced the creation of a protected areas working group about 6 months ago, but we haven't seen their report yet, so we're not entirely sure what's being recommended to government in terms of moving forward. And then in Quebec, Quebec did, when I joined CPAWS back in 2007, Quebec was sitting at about 2% in terms of protected areas. And so the province has made enormous progress in terms of moving forward on parks and protected areas. Quebec is, one of the leaders nationally. And that was largely accomplished by working with Indigenous communities and with strong public support. They really took that public interest, public support for nature, for the environment, and went with it and created a number of new protected areas. Unfortunately, most of the new protected areas are in northern Quebec. There is still work to be done in southern Quebec, where we have about 22,000 square kilometers of protected areas that are currently blocked by the forest industry, including some in the Ottawa River watershed. And I'll get to that in a second. But while the industry is blocking these protected areas from an economic standpoint, a job protection standpoint, we have to realize that protected areas have a huge benefit to local economies. For every $1 invested in, by a government in parks and protected areas, at least $6 are generated by people who recreate in those areas. And it's been shown that the creation of parks and protected areas they attract people to settle in communities in proximity to protected areas, and protected areas also help insulate communities like Western Quebec, which are still heavily dependent on the forest industry, from that boom and bust cycle where mills open, mills close. There's a lot of fluctuation in terms of prices for wood volume and things like that. So there's an incredible value in doing this. Beyond sort of the traditional ecological values that we talk about. This here is a map of those areas in Quebec that are currently stalled. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this gray area here is the Dumoine River protected area. And so it is protected, but you'll see there's a number of other areas around it. And then the Noire and Coulonge watershed here that are currently unprotected. And what's more, in terms of these areas, they're all areas where there is strong local support for them. Whether they're at the county, regional, municipal level, there's strong support in place. Okay. And if there, yeah, all right, okay. So, and so moving further, zooming in a little bit more in terms of the Ottawa River watershed and the region where CPAWS Ottawa Valley works. Only about 8% of the Ottawa River watershed is actually protected in parks and protected areas. So well below the provincial average in both provinces. And I mean, what's interesting, the Ottawa River watershed is twice the size of the province of New Brunswick. And it's an area that is really at the confluence of the boreal forest and the southern mixed and deciduous forest. So it's an area that's extremely rich in biodiversity. And as I mentioned earlier as well, it really forms that connection between the forests of the south and the boreal forests of the north, which is why initiatives like Algonquin Adirondacks are so important, and other projects that aim to secure those connections before they're lost. So just looking at this region quickly, I mean, you have Lady Evelyn Smoothwater up here. This is the Dumoine protected area over here, Ottawa, Gatineau down here, Gatineau Park, and the National Capital Greenbelt. This is Algonquin, and over 2/3 of Algonquin Park is open to industrial logging, and so those areas really don't meet the criteria for a protected area, which is why we've displayed it in this way. The sort of the green blobs that you see, those are the areas that are off limits to logging. And another area of interest to CPAWS Ottawa Valley down here is the Madawaska Highlands, which is another area that has incredible potential, not only from a conservation perspective, but also a recreation perspective. I mean, it really could be sort of the Ontario equivalent to Gatineau Park, given the proximity to Ottawa. So from that, we're going to look at the Noire, Coulonge, and Dumoine. So the current status. So this is the current status essentially, and so we got here there's been talk of protecting the Dumoine River for over 75 years, and the current push really came out of the Quebec Protected Area Strategy, which was launched in the early 2000s, and there was a lot of work done at that point to identify intact, sort of large intact landscapes, and the Dumoine River came up immediately as the poster child for that, just given that it is the last undammed tributary to the Ottawa River in Quebec. The watershed, while there's been logging over the years, obviously, it is still very much intact. I mean, those of you who've been there, there's no settlement, there's no major communities on the river. There's a handful of hunt camps and things like that, logging roads, but no major highways, no transmission lines, no significant fragmentation. So from that perspective, it really came up as being the an ideal candidate for protection. And CPAWS Ottawa Valley, we began championing that particular area. And we secured support from the Algonquin Nation and local municipalities, and that's a good question in terms of what are the ZECs doing. I'll answer that in a second. We also are sort of, as organizations like CPAWS do. I mean, we're an advocacy group at the end of the day. So we managed to flood the minister's office with thousands of postcards and emails and letters, and all of that has an impact, and certainly working with the local community was very important, because it was right around the time of the sort of the first forestry crisis, where a number of mills had closed, and we did have some mayors who were hoping that these mills would come back, but a number of other people felt that the likelihood of these mills coming back, and they haven't come back in 20 odd years. They really saw this as an opportunity for the region to pivot and sort of looking at, the situation in Algonquin Park, which is just across the river, where you have hundreds of thousands of visitors, to look at, you look at communities like Huntsville and others that are, reaping the benefits of that, really, how do you bring some of that over to the Pontiac? And that was very successful in terms of getting local support. And so through that process, we were able to get about 1,445 square kilometers protected in the Dumoine River watershed. There's a small area to the northeast called Wenatchee, which has been protected. And now we're working at essentially connecting the two of them. So with expansions, about 500 square kilometers of expansions to do that. And those expansions are in, colored in orange on that map I showed earlier. We're still waiting for the province to move forward with those. And then in terms of the Noire and Coulonge, we're CPAWS Ottawa Valley. We're working with a group in the Outaouais called Canoe. And we have a project that is funded in part by the federal government and by a couple of foundations to promote a protected area of about 1,100 square kilometers along both rivers, so the Noire, part of the Noire, part of the Coulonge. And the ZECs are, the ZECs are supportive in terms of this. Initially, there was some talk of potentially creating a provincial park or other, a higher level of protection. That would have meant that the ZECs would have lost control of the territory. And so what we're aiming for now in terms of protection is essentially in Quebec, it's called an aquatic reserve or a biodiversity reserve. And essentially it's an area that's off limits to the industrial activities, as I mentioned earlier, but where, all of the recreational activities are allowed. Hunting and fishing will continue, trapping, motorized access in terms of, ATVs and snowmobiles, that continues to be permitted. Although, there'll be some work done to rationalize the trail network to a certain extent to minimize the impact. And certainly, all of the, traditional indigenous activities, be that hunting, fishing, trapping, use of the land for cultural purposes, all of that is permitted. So this is very much I'd say a middle of the road type of protected area where, the big industrial activities are not permitted, but, most other users will be able to continue to make use of the watershed. And combined, we're looking at over 3,000 square kilometers of conservation in Western Quebec, and that's almost half the size of Algonquin Park, and which leads to I would say a pretty significant conservation constellation of conservation areas in this part of Ontario and Quebec. And it ensures, that connectivity to the boreal forest. And then, and this is just another map showing the Dumoine River protected area in relation to this is the Dumoine River protected area here. This is the Wenatchee protected area up here. And as I said, we're working to connect the two of them this way. And then some of these bottlenecks in the Dumoine protected area as well, we're looking to fill those in just to ensure that there is that easy flow of, that easy connection northwards. And then we have the Noire and Coulonge to the east here. and of particular interest to us, I mean, certainly the main branch of the Coulonge and the Noire, but also we want to ensure that the east branch of the Coulonge is protected as well. You know, that particular area is has a large concentration of wood turtles, and it's also, I think, from a recreational perspective as well, it does have some interest, given that it is you know, slightly more accessible as well. And then another another CPAWS project aims to connect essentially the Dumoine River protected area to Algonquin Park. Only about 18 kilometers separate the two at the sort of the narrowest point. And there are you know, a couple of small protected areas in here already. Grants Creek, Bissett Creek, Driftwood Provincial Park, and so we'd like to see some increased protection in this region, particularly due to you know, some interest on the part of so some mining interest in this area as well. There's been graphite that's been discovered, and you know, I think having a graphite mine at this location would not be appropriate, to say the least. So and you know, we've discussed this opportunity with the government of Ontario, and there seems to be some you know, some interest here in either expanding Grants Creek Provincial Park or potentially creating another protected area here. So there'll be more to come on this one, I'm sure. In terms of you know, some next steps for us at CPAWS Ottawa Valley, you know, we you know, continue obviously to be a voice for the three rivers, even after they're protected, to ensure that you know, there is a strong management plan put in place, you know, to ensure that you know, management decisions put nature first. And then beyond that as well, we are starting to look at protected area opportunities along the CPAWS River and the Fil-de-Grande River, which is a major western tributary to the Dumoine. And you know, there's species at risk, obviously, in that area. The Algonquin wolf has been identified there, and so that's another you know, another opportunity that we're going to be pursuing. And then you know, working with you know, groups like Wally's and others to you know, facilitate public access to the rivers, you know, ensuring that you know, there are educational programs being made available, promoting awareness and stewardship. So you know, certainly we you know, we see our involvement here, you know, going well beyond you know, just getting the protected area status, but much more of a long-term role in terms of, you know, ensuring that these places are well managed. And then I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to share a couple of CPAWS initiatives in the region. So the first one is our annual artists retreat, the Dumoine River Art for Wilderness. And so if there are any artists in the group, or you know, if you know of artists who would appreciate a week of camping along the Dumoine River, you know, this is the opportunity for you. You know, it's while, I mean, there is a fundraising element to it, it's much more than that. I mean, this is a great way to raise awareness of the three rivers, of the need to protect them, of their value, and you know, recognizing as well that not everyone has the ability to get up there. And so this is a great way to connect people to nature, who may not have the opportunity to visit. And if you are, though, in the region during the month of May and June, the artwork from last year's retreat will be on display at an art gallery in the town of Deep River. And if you're, you can learn more at our website, dumoine.org. It's a great event. Every year we have about 15 to 20 artists who join us, and the quality of the artwork is second to none. And then another one of our initiatives is the Three Rivers Fund. And the Three Rivers Fund was established a few years ago as a vehicle to bring together the different organizations and businesses and individuals as well who are interested in the preservation and the sort of the ongoing stewardship of the Three Rivers. So the members of the fund include companies that run trips on the rivers, some of the lodges, as well as companies that offer gear, shuttling, services like that. And what we found as well is that it's been a great opportunity for these organizations to actually connect with each other, because that is one thing that's lacking. There's been no central place where all of these different organizations can actually come together. And we see that as being, our role to a certain extent as well, to be a bit of a facilitator, or at least to catalyze, some connections between different stakeholders. And so, members of the fund make a financial contribution, and the funding is allocated evenly to our ongoing advocacy work, and also to an on-the-ground project in one of the watersheds. So we've supported the establishment, working with Wally to establish the Tote Road Trail, and also for installation of thunder boxes, and the photo here of this plastic shack. This is located along the Fil-de-Grande River. And this is our project for this year to clean this up, and that gives you a sense of the type of work we do with the Three Rivers Fund. And so a project like this would be a lot of volunteer opportunities to come in and help with the removal of garbage and other things that get left behind. And then in terms of the Tote Road Trail, Wally, if you want to say a few words at this point, or?
Yes, thanks, John. Very, very interesting. The history of the Des Moines River dates back a good 300 years, of course, beginning with a band of Algonquins that the Des Moines River was their home hunting territory. This was called the Des Moines River Band. And we have tried to trace the human history, the human involvement history of the Des Moines River through all these different user groups. And one of the major user group, of course, was the logging industry. And to access the white pine and the red pines, they began at the mouth of the Des Moines around 1840, and slowly built themselves a road, which every kilometer of the road, they allowed them to cut that kilometer of the forest and drive the logs down the river in the spring. So by 1850, there was a logging road called a tote road, meaning that they carried supplies to the lumber camps to keep them working up these roads. They toted, it's an old English word, the freight up of food and for the men and the horses up these roads. So by 1850, they had completed a tote road all the way to Grand Chute. If you happen to know the Des Moines, Grand Chute is sort of the scenic highlight of the river trip. It's a fantastic waterfall that was on the opening slide that John showed. So part of our objective is to get people more passionately involved in speaking out for protection of a wilderness area like the Des Moines. And our belief is that the passion comes from actually experiencing the wilderness in one way or another, either canoeing the river, attending an art camp, or we also felt that if you appreciated the history of the Des Moines River, then perhaps you'd find another venue for your passion. So we've been doing a lot of research about the history of the Des Moines watershed, and we felt that if we opened up this tote road as a hiking trail, it would create another type of wilderness experience for people that don't necessarily know how to canoe, but almost everybody knows how to hike. So we have for the last 3 years been clearing this tote road trail, and it's now complete with about a dozen new campsites, and we're in the process of writing historical panels to go on the different positions on the trail that require some interpretation. So the Tote Road Trail, we think, is a great contribution to recreational opportunities in the Des Moines Valley. Our other objective, aside from creating passionate people about the Des Moines, is to try to counteract in a positive way the strong emphasis on mechanized recreation in the Des Moines Valley now. It's a very strong area for hunting, fishing, skidooing, ATVing, car camping, and the only self-propelled recreation that's happening right now is wilderness canoeing and kayaking. So we felt if we could get another 1,000 people or so hiking a historic trail, we think that will give more support to the ZEC Des Moines that would like to diversify the type of person that they're attracting to the area. So those are our objectives with creating this trail. And we'll have more practical information if you want to access the trail this year. We'll have a map that you can access, a paper map you can take with you, and a electronic map online by hopefully this June. Thanks, John.
All right. I am aware of the time. I might just skip ahead a couple of slides and just to do what people can on the call can do. So we need your support to be frank. We need to be advocating and sharing our passion for this with decision makers and telling them how important this is to you and to your community, and to demonstrate that there is a strong interest, a strong support for protecting the Noire and Coulonge, and also to finish the Dumoine project by enshrining those additions in law. And so even if you're not a resident of Quebec, you can write to Premier Legault, to the ministers at the Ministry of the Environment, Ministry of Forests, Ministry of Natural Resources, and just let them know how valuable this is to you, and that you support protected areas. And I can actually provide, all of that contact information in, by email or whatever. And as well, if you have the opportunity to, to experience the rivers, or if you have in the past, please, consider, sharing your experiences on social media and with others, and really encourage others to, advocate as well. We need to show that this is not just, this isn't just a local, Pontiac issue or Ottawa Valley issue, but I mean, this matters to Canadians from coast to coast. And certainly consider supporting groups like CPAWS Ottawa Valley, by liking and sharing our social media, things like that, becoming a volunteer. There's a number of volunteer opportunities, or a number of areas where volunteers could help support our work, both with on the ground type of project stewardship type projects, but also in terms of communications, strategy, steering committee type work as well. There's a lot of opportunities for that, and obviously by making a financial contribution, we are a registered charity, and we are able to issue tax receipts for contributions that are made, and certainly consider joining the Three Rivers Fund, or supporting initiatives like the Artists Retreat, and another couple of things that you can do in addition to sharing photos and videos with us. The Three Rivers are unfortunately data deficient, so we really don't have a lot of data in terms of the species that live there, their distribution, their health. It's really an area where there's just a lack of data at all levels in terms of water quality, in terms of plants and animals and other features. So if you are comfortable using apps like iNaturalist or eBird, it's very easy to record observations, and then that helps to fill in the blanks and to paint a more fulsome picture of the watersheds. And if you're not on those apps, that's fine. You can feel free to send any observations directly to us, and even just photos of interesting trees or interesting plants. All of that is incredibly helpful. And I think, and certainly if you see something, say something. I mean, if there are issues with with campsites or other features, do let us know. We do have volunteers who are keen to get up there and to do things, as well as volunteering yourself to clean up a campsite, or bring in a thunderbox, clear a portage, things like that. And finally, I think just shopping locally in the communities around the Three Rivers. It's very important. They are small communities. They depend on visitors, and I think it's important to let them know that you are a paddler, you are up here to recreate, and just how much you value that opportunity, because there is a perception, unfortunately, in a lot of the communities that the paddlers, campers, don't spend a lot of money, and it's more the snowmobilers and the ATV crowd that spend the money, and so they tend to unfortunately get listened to maybe a little bit more than we do. So I think this helps to balance things out, and finally, I mean, I think just helping to connect others to the watersheds is so important. You know, whether that's new Canadians, young people, seniors, or Indigenous people who are disconnected from the land. I think you know, sharing the skills that you have as a group and as individuals with others, and you know, playing that sort of mentorship role to encourage sort of the next generation of people to get out there and explore and advocate as well. So and with that, this is my you know, my contact information. If you know, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you'd like to get involved, if you know, spot anything that's of interest. And you can follow us on social media. Just you know, search for CPAWS Ottawa Valley, and you'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much. I expect that for those of us who have not been up there, that will quickly become a priority. And for those who have, a return visit will be very eagerly anticipated. Let me just invite questions from anybody, any of the participants for our two speakers, or just comments generally on that great overview of what's going on up there. Maybe I'll just start off with a question, which is just, when will you know that this effort has been officially accepted, and you can breathe easy that these areas will be subject to ongoing protection or perpetual protection? Is there a point in time at which you expect that will be decided?
We're hoping that by the end of 2022, there should be a decision made, an announcement made. Hoping maybe even before that. We do have an election coming up in Quebec, and so this would be a nice thing to announce before an election. So we're certainly encouraging the government to do that. But I would say within the year.
Are there, I think those of us in Ontario noted with dismay our F grade, and it's a bit of a dilemma about where to begin. I think the, you know, you pointed to the Algonquin area, and I think there are various efforts to extend protection to any number of areas. I'm just wondering if there are good ways we can sort of plug into what might be hanging in the balance in Ontario, where we can individually or collectively put any weight behind.
Yeah, I think Frank had a pretty good comment in the chat. I don't know, Frank, if you want to unmute and jump in. Maybe not. His comment was basically any land dealings in Ontario have to involve in the native, you know, groups, First Nations, major say in what happens. So it's another wrinkle, you know, in the whole scheme of protection.
Well, there's the movement of Indigenous, I guess, protected and conserved areas, where the Indigenous communities are actually taking leadership. And John, does your group partner with Indigenous communities that have any of those projects up and running?
I mean, CPAWS nationally across the country, we do. Here in the Ottawa Valley, not at this point. We have had, we have had productive conversations with the community of Pikwakanagan in Ontario about the Madawaska Highlands and that connection piece between the Dumoine River and Algonquin Park. But those of you living in Eastern Ontario will know that the entire area is subject to sort of ongoing land claim negotiations, and that does, for the time being, make it a little bit more tricky in terms of the establishment of parks, or sort of allocating new uses or new land uses essentially. So But through the land claim, there are two new, through the land claim process, there are two new protected areas being planned in Ontario. There's an expansion to the Lake St. Peter protected area and a new provincial park called White Duck Provincial Park, which will be established as well. And they're sort of south of Algonquin Park and will help reinforce that Algonquin Adirondacks connection by, it's sort of a stepping stones essentially for species.
Okay, I have a light comment. Maybe Wally can jump in. I've done the Des Moines a few years ago with a few people on this call actually, and we noticed the thunder boxes are super colorful, very artistic. You talk about that because that's a little light, but
Yeah, sure. Well, before we started the Tote Road Trail project, our first project was just to clean up the campsites, and we felt that following the success of thunder boxes in Algonquin Park, we'd sponsor building and putting them on each of the campsites on the Des Moines. So we found a local builder in the village of Rapide de Chouachame, which locally is pronounced Swisha.
yeah.
And he built them and he had them sitting in his yard. And then the local youth group came along and said, hey, can we paint those? And so the first dozen or so that we built, a bunch of kids in Swisha just painted all sorts of fun pictures on them. And a lot of them had nature themes. So we just latched onto this. And as we expanded the concept of putting thunder boxes on the Tote Road Trail, we appealed to local artists, and it really took off, where they sort of shared a competition to make them spectacular. So yeah, we hope everybody enjoys them. It is a nice
Yeah,
fun
they
addition.
are the very artistic thunder box. I've never seen any boxes like that. It's the first river and the only river I've seen them on. Yeah, it's like you want to go there.
Take your time. Yeah.
Yep.
I think Mark has his hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the presentation, Mark and Sault Ste. Marie. The other week, I heard that the province of Ontario was going to have another push on developing small hydro sites. So that makes me worry about our Agawa River and our Batchewana River and our Goulet River. And of course, the Mississauga has been under threat for a long time with the Patent Post location as another prospective dam. So I'm just wondering, I guess a question for WCA. Does the WCA get involved in that type of thing as another form of threat to our rivers?
I would certainly think it's a good thing to keep an eye on, and at the very least, we should communicate information to our members and promote awareness of local activism, and identify instances where it can be useful for us to either individually or collectively add our voice or our views to it.
Yeah, I think the big thing would be, we are 500 members across Canada, US, and a couple in Europe actually. So it's just pushing the button and having meetings like this. You've got this broad, 500 members see it, and then obviously we post it on YouTube, and who knows, another whatever, a couple thousand maybe look at our videos, and so that's I think the number one thing we can do. Membership is set up by you pay dues, and that basically breaks even on all our costs, basically website and our journal and all the other things we do as a club. So we're not like a big advocate that we have lots of money to give away. Every so often we do give some money to worthwhile causes, but generally it's more the publicity and connecting the dots with the 500 members we have.
I mean, we have regular email communications, and we have our periodical bulletin. So I think highlighting these instances in those channels least makes people aware of these things before it's too late to add your name to a petition or something.
Yeah. I mean, one of the
Wally
beauties
and-
of these calls is we do get people from, all over, we just had there Sault Ste. Marie. I've been on calls where one of our speakers a few months back was from the UK. And we had speakers from, Yukon and wherever, all over the States. So it's really interesting on these calls. Zoom's brought that dimension to the WCA, where before we'd have meetings, but generally they were in the Toronto area. So they were, limited to the Toronto crowd. But now it's broadened it so that more people can participate and, see what we're doing basically.
I'd just be interested in comments from John and Wally if the Dumoine and the other two rivers will be resilient to a sort of trend growth in visitors, paddlers, hikers in those corridors. Do you feel the sort of management of the campsites and infrastructure is such that that won't be an undue strain on the ecology of the area?
Well, it's always a concern. The Des Moines, the upper Des Moines is challenging enough that it's pretty limited to people that have whitewater skills. And for the 50 years that I've been watching its use, it's been pretty consistent. There's probably between 1,000 and 1,200 people that paddle the river each year.
Yeah.
The introduction of the hiking trail is on the lower 25% of the river. And our thinking is that we've created enough new campsites that it won't be competitive between canoeists and hikers. And we just think that it's far enough inland that we think the trade-off between getting more groups of passionate people will be equal to the impact or less. John?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I think we've done a good job in terms of locating the trail and the campsites as well. We're from a sustainability perspective, we're building bridges and observation platforms and things like that. So that does reduce the impact on the on areas that are more sensitive, and there's a big educational component as well in terms of the behaviors people. We want people to respect while they're out there. So I think I agree with Wally. Yeah.
What's the access like at the mouth of the Des Moines? Like for canoeists, we just canoe there, or canoe, from there to the, outfitter. But how do you get there as far as hiking goes?
There is one outfitter that will do a shuttle by boat.
Okay.
So he can take you there. There is an interesting trip that a few people are scheduling where they hike up and they have the outfitter drive their canoes to the top, and then they paddle back down to the Ottawa. So
Okay.
it's a combination there. So
Hmm.
you can also, you don't have to hike the whole trail. You can hike down and back or different things like that. We hope that more people will see potential to create a small business, shuttle business, as the trail gets busier.
And presumably, will it be accessible for winter trips?
Yes and no. It has the potential to be skied. It's a beautiful area, snowshoed or skied, but there is no insulated accommodation. You'd have to be totally self-sufficient. So again, that sort of limits people. Who knows what potential we could have in the future with yurts or something to that effect. It's a beautiful area. The snow is more consistent than down here in any of our cities, so it has great potential that way.
Must be spectacular.
Yeah, it's great. I
Um,
noticed Dave Skinner had a question. Dave, hi.
Hi, Wally. I put some of the thunder boxes on the Des Moines last year and had my scouts paint them, and they had fun with that. The question I had is, we went down to Coulonge in August. Is there somebody who manages or oversees campsites on the Coulonge, because they don't seem to be very well marked or looked after, as far as a lot of them are just sandbars, and
Yeah.
we would camp on a sandbar and
Mhm.
but there didn't seem to be any sort of facilities or anything. And we were wondering, if we built more of them this year, is there someone who could tell us where to put them on the Coulonge or the Noire? The Noire seems to be a little better, but anyway, that was just a question.
Yeah, well, we actually, it's a good question. We got very good feedback, and thank you and your scout troop for putting the 5 of them on the Red Pine portion of the trail. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it was well received on the Des Moines, and so CPAWS and Friends of the Des Moines built another 30 to be put on the Coulonge and the Noire. And I don't know what it is. It just doesn't seem to be quite the community, or maybe just the communication yet, to get volunteers to actually take one of these and put them on the right campsite. There's not the leadership there yet that there is on the Des Moines.
Well, I hadn't even heard that you'd built these things, so it's news to me. I mean, I've got a group of 20 canoeists and some scouts, some senior scouts, who would probably love to go up there and put some of them on campsites.
Yeah, so we put 13 on campsites this year, and we hope to do the rest of them next year. I'm planning to devote a little time to that and mark the campsites that have them and don't have them, and see what we can do.
Can you just clarify the logistics? If someone is going for a trip on one of those rivers, could they get one? I mean, would they fit in a typical 17-foot canoe along with the rest of your gear, so you could do it as part of a trip, or does it have to be a special?
Well, basically, right now they're stored at one of the shuttle outfits called the Esprit Rafting, and they're assembled. What they can come apart quite easily to go down to 4 flat sides and a top, and fit on the bottom of your canoe. So you just need a screwdriver and a piece of rope to hold it together, and you could carry it down the river pretty easily to the designated site.
We had actually put them in, we folded them flat and we put them in a barrel harness.
Yeah,
We were able to portage them in a barrel harness, but of course the barrel harness is dedicated to that until you get it out and put it back together. But it wouldn't be that big a deal to just have your barrel separate, and then, because they got handles at least.
Yeah. So yes, it's definitely something we want to put more energy into, getting them on campsites this year.
Okay.
I've posted my email address in the comments section.
Mhm.
So if anybody wants more information about volunteering on the Des Moines for any of our projects, feel free. I also made a contribution for writing the logistics of different options for the Des Moines on a website called paddle.ca. So if you're looking for a 2022 updated contact list of shuttle drivers and campsites and things like that, take a look at that site.
I know when we did the Des Moines a few years ago, we had an issue that we can only go up to kilometer 64 on the bridge, the old bridge. The logging road was supposedly washed out to go to, a higher spot. Is that still the case?
Uh-oh.
Freeze up. Sorry, you froze, Gary.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I think Sandro's trip, couple years ago, we ended up kilometer 64. And we really wanted to start higher up, kilometer 100 or something. And the guy was saying the road was really in rough shape up there.
Yeah, there was a creek on the top on the lodging, hunting lodge on the top. I think was the Bennett Creek or something.
No,
It's
that's
going.
called, oh, I
Which
think
one?
you wanted to use the North River to get into Lac.
Yeah,
Forge.
yeah.
Yeah, that is a really rough road. It's in the ZEC on the east side of the river, which doesn't seem to have any resources to maintain the road. So there's only one shuttle driver currently that'll take you on that road. We're literally looking at hiring a grader ourselves at certain times of the year. Would cost about $1,000 to go up and repair a couple of sections of the worst part of the road. So Friends of Des Moines still feels that's a reasonable thing to do to keep people recreating in the Des Moines watershed. So there are several starting points for even longer trips. If you want to do 10 days or more, CPAWS is a starting point, and
Yeah.
the Moose River is also a good starting point.
Can you still fly in from Swisher, or is that a thing of the past?
That's a thing of the past. Yeah, that's a great part of the history, but it'll never come back, I don't think.
Used to start at Lac Laforge, I guess.
That's right.
I think after they opened the logging roads, right? They stopped flying.
Yeah, the price of gas went up and the price of insurance went up, and the logging roads got better. So the airplane business didn't work out too well after that.
Well, I think that's it, Tom and John and Wally. I want to thank you for giving the presentation. It was excellent. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know. So thanks very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
All right, well, hope to see some of you on the river this year.
Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely. Very
Thank
good.
you.
And thanks,
Thank
John,
you.
and good luck with all your projects around around both provinces. We hope they continue to bear fruit. Very important work.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay. And we'll look forward to suggestions about other conservation-oriented topics we could cover in future sessions. So please give some thought to that.
Cheers. Thanks.
Okay. And we'll just adjourn. So thanks, everybody.